The pen felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in Jasmine's trembling hand. Across the polished conference table, the divorce papers stared back at her with cold, black letters that would end everything she had once believed would last forever. The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and disappointment, and the silence was so heavy she could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. "Mrs. Coleman, whenever you're ready," Attorney Williams said gently, pushing his glasses up his nose. His voice was kind but professional, the voice of someone who had seen too many marriages crumble in this very room. Jasmine's beautiful dark eyes, framed by long lashes, blinked rapidly as she tried to focus on the signature line. Her smooth brown skin felt cold despite the warm office, and her usually steady hands shook like autumn leaves. She had dreamed of this moment for months, had practiced signing these papers in her mind 100 times, but now that the moment was here, something felt terribly wrong. The door burst open with a bang that made everyone jump. Ryan Coleman stumbled in, his tie loose around his neck, his usually perfect brown hair messy from running his hands through it. His light brown eyes were wild with panic, and his dress shirt was wrinkled like he had slept in it. Sorry I'm late," he gasped, trying to catch his breath. "The meeting ran over and then there was traffic and my phone died and—" "Ryan," Jasmine interrupted, her voice sharp as broken glass. "You're 2 hours late. To our divorce." The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had burned too long. Ryan's face crumpled as he sank into the chair across from her, and for a moment, Jasmine saw the man she had fallen in love with 5 years ago. Not the stranger who came home late every night, not the person who forgot their anniversary, but Ryan. Ryan. "I know," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I know I'm always late. I know I always mess everything up. But Jazz, please don't sign those papers. Not yet." Attorney Williams cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Perhaps you two need a moment to discuss." "No," Jasmine said firmly, though her voice wavered. "We've talked enough. We've fought enough. We've cried enough." She picked up the pen again, her wedding ring catching the afternoon light streaming through the office windows. "Some things are just broken beyond fixing." Ryan leaned forward desperately. "Remember our first date? You said you believed in second chances. You said everyone deserves a chance to make things right. That was before you chose your job over me every single day for 2 years, Jasmine replied, but her hand still hadn't moved toward the paper. "That was before you forgot to come to my mom's funeral because you were in a client meeting." The pain in Ryan's eyes was so raw that Jasmine had to look away. She remembered that day, the worst day of her life, standing at her mother's graveside and scanning the crowd for his face. He had arrived just as they were lowering the casket, full of apologies and explanations that felt empty as her chest. "I was a fool," Ryan said quietly. "I was an idiot who thought I could have everything without fighting for anything. I thought you would always be there, no matter how badly I treated what we had." Jasmine's hand trembled as she finally touched the pen to paper. But instead of signing, she found herself drawing small circles, buying time she didn't understand why she needed. "My mom used to say that love isn't just a feeling," she whispered. "She said it's a choice you make every day. You stopped choosing us, Ryan. You stopped choosing me. Then let me start choosing again," he pleaded. "Let me prove that I can put us first. That I can be the husband you deserved from the beginning." Attorney Williams shifted in his chair, clearly uncomfortable with the raw emotion filling his usually sterile office. "Perhaps we should reschedule this meeting for another day when you both have had time to." "No," Jasmine said, her voice stronger now. "If we don't do this today, we never will. We'll keep making excuses, keep hoping things will magically get better, keep pretending that love is enough when it's not." She looked directly into Ryan's eyes, those light brown eyes that used to make her feel like she was the only woman in the world. "Love isn't enough, Ryan. It never was. Love without respect, without priority, without presence. It's just a pretty word that doesn't mean anything." Ryan's face went pale and Jasmine saw him swallow hard. "You're right," he said so quietly she almost didn't hear him. "You're absolutely right. I loved you but I didn't show it. I wanted you but I didn't choose you. I needed you but I didn't fight for you." The admission hung between them like a bridge neither knew how to cross. Jasmine felt her chest tighten with all the words she had wanted to hear for so long, words that came too late to matter. "I'm sorry, Jazz," Ryan continued, his voice thick with unshed tears. "I'm sorry I made you feel like you weren't worth my time. I'm sorry I made you feel like your dreams didn't matter. I'm sorry I made you feel alone in a marriage." Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. She had thought she was done crying. She had imagined this moment would feel like freedom, like finally letting go of a weight she had carried too long. Instead, it felt like drowning. "I'm sorry too," she whispered. I'm sorry I gave up on us. I'm sorry I stopped fighting. I'm sorry I let my hurt turn into hate. They sat in silence, two people who had loved each other badly, staring at the papers that would make their failure official. The afternoon sun was starting to set, painting the office in shades of gold and orange that reminded Jasmine of their first sunset together on the beach where Ryan had proposed. What happens now? Ryan asked, his voice small and lost. Jasmine looked at the pen in her hand, then at the man across from her who had been her everything and her heartbreak. She thought about all the nights she had fallen asleep alone, all the dinners she had eaten by herself, all the dreams she had shared with empty rooms because he was never there to listen. But she also remembered the way he used to make her laugh until her sides hurt, the way he would bring her coffee in bed every Sunday morning, the way he used to hold her during thunderstorms because he knew they scared her. I don't know, she admitted, and for the first time in months she was telling him the complete truth. The memory hit Jasmine like a wave as she sat frozen in the lawyer's office. It was a Thursday in October 3 years ago, and the rain was coming down so hard it sounded like bullets on the coffee shop windows. She had been soaked to the bone, her carefully straightened hair ruined, her favorite dress clinging to her like a second skin. She had ducked into grind coffee, more to escape the storm than for caffeine, shivering as the warm air hit her cold skin. The place was packed with other rain refugees, every table taken, every chair occupied by someone scrolling through their phone while waiting for the weather to pass. "Excuse me," a warm voice had said behind her. "You can share my table if you want. I promise I don't bite." Jasmine had turned around and found herself looking into the kindest light brown eyes she had ever seen. The man was tall, maybe 6 feet, with warm brown skin and a smile that made her forget she was cold and wet. He was wearing a simple blue button-down that brought out his eyes, and his dark hair was slightly damp from his own encounter with the rain. "I don't want to bother you," she had said, suddenly aware of how she must look with mascara probably running down her cheeks. "Trust me, you're not bothering me," he had laughed, and the sound was like music. "I'm Ryan, by the way. And you look like someone who needs hot chocolate more than coffee." "Jasmine," she had replied, accepting his offered hand. His grip was firm and warm, and when their skin touched, she felt a little jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with the storm outside. "And you're right about the hot chocolate." They had spent the next 3 hours talking like old friends. Ryan told her about his job designing buildings, about how he had always wanted to create spaces where people could feel safe and happy. Jasmine shared her dream of opening her own bakery, about how baking made her feel connected to her grandmother who had taught her everything she knew about creating sweetness in the world. "What's your specialty?" Ryan had asked, leaning forward with genuine interest that made Jasmine's heart skip. "Chocolate chip cookies," she had said with a shy smile. "I know it sounds simple, but I make them with brown butter and sea salt, and people say they taste like childhood and happiness had a baby." Ryan had thrown back his head and laughed, a real laugh that came from his belly and made other people in the coffee shop turn to look at them with envious smiles. "That might be the best description of food I've ever heard," he had said, still chuckling. "I would love to try some sometime." "Are you asking me out, Ryan?" Jasmine had asked, surprising herself with her boldness. "Actually, yes, I am," he had replied without hesitation. "Would you like to go out with me, Jasmine? Maybe somewhere that serves more than coffee and has better lighting so I can properly see how beautiful you are." The compliment had made her cheeks warm, but it didn't feel fake or practiced like so many lines she had heard before. Ryan said it like he was simply stating a fact, like commenting on the weather or the time of day. "I'd like that," she had said, and meant it more than she had meant anything in a long time. Their first official date had been the following Saturday at a small Italian restaurant that Ryan had chosen because he said the pasta was almost as good as the atmosphere. He had been right on both counts. The food was incredible, but more importantly, they had talked for hours without any awkward silences or forced conversation. "Tell me something most people don't know about you," Ryan had said over dessert, twirling his fork in the tiramisu they were sharing. Jasmine had thought for a moment, watching the way the candlelight played across his features. "I'm afraid of thunderstorms," she had admitted. "Have been since I was little. Most people think it's silly because I'm an adult, but when it really starts storming, I still feel like that scared kid hiding under the covers." "That's not silly at all," Ryan had said seriously. "Fear doesn't follow logic. What helps when you're scared? Hot chocolate and old movies," Jasmine had said, touched by his understanding instead of judgment. "What about you? What are you afraid of?" Ryan had been quiet for a long moment, considering. "Failure," he had finally said. "Not the little kind like burning dinner or being late to a meeting. The big kind. The kind where you look back on your life and realize you wasted it on things that didn't matter." What matters to you? Jasmine had asked softly. Building something that lasts, he had said, looking directly into her eyes. Creating something beautiful that makes the world a little better. Finding someone to share it all with. The intensity in his gaze had made Jasmine's breath catch. She had dated plenty of men who said pretty words, but none who looked at her like she might be the answer to a question he had been asking his whole life. I think you're going to do amazing things, Ryan Coleman, she had said, and had been surprised by how much she meant it after knowing him for less than a week. I hope so, he had replied, reaching across the table to take her hand. And I hope you'll be there to see them. That night, he had walked her to her door like a perfect gentleman, and when he had kissed her goodnight, it had been soft and sweet and full of promise. Jasmine had floated into her apartment feeling like she was living in a romance novel. Over the next few months they had been inseparable. Ryan would text her good morning before she was even awake, and good night after she had already started dreaming about him. He brought her flowers on random Tuesdays, not because he had done something wrong, but because he had seen them and thought of her smile. When she had finally let him try her famous chocolate chip cookies, he had closed his eyes and made a sound of pure pleasure that had made Jasmine blush from her toes to her hairline. Marry me, he had said after finishing his third cookie, and even though he was joking, the words had sent a thrill through Jasmine's entire body. Ask me again in a year, she had teased back, not knowing that he would take her seriously. Exactly 1 year later, on the anniversary of that first rainy day in the coffee shop, Ryan had gotten down on one knee in that same cafe and asked her to be his wife. The ring had been perfect, simple and elegant, just like she had always imagined. But more than the ring, it was the speech he gave that had made her cry happy tears. You make every day feel like sunshine even on the rainiest days, he had said, his voice shaking with emotion. You make me want to be the kind of man who deserves your love. You make me believe in forever. Yes, Jasmine had whispered through her tears. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. The whole coffee shop had erupted in applause, and the barista had given them free coffee for a month to celebrate their engagement. They had been so happy, so sure that their love could weather any storm. Now, sitting in the lawyer's office 3 years later, Jasmine wondered where that couple had gone. When had Ryan stopped looking at her like she was sunshine? When had she stopped believing in their forever? Jas. Ryan's voice brought her back to the present. Are you okay? She realized she had been staring at the divorce papers with tears streaming down her face, lost in memories of when they had been happy. When love had felt like enough. I was just remembering, she said quietly. The coffee shop, Ryan said softly, and she knew he had been thinking about it too. You said I looked like I needed hot chocolate more than coffee, Jasmine remembered. You still do, Ryan said, and something in his voice made her look up at him. The same kindness was still there in his light brown eyes, buried under layers of hurt and disappointment, but still there. For a moment, they were just Ryan and Jasmine again, two people who had fallen in love on a rainy day and thought it would be enough to carry them through anything. But memories, Jasmine reminded herself, were just pretty stories about people who no longer existed. The first crack in their perfect love story had been so small that Jasmine had barely noticed it at the time. It was 6 months after their wedding when Ryan started staying late at the office more often, coming home with apologies and explanations about demanding clients and tight deadlines. I'm sorry, baby, he would say, finding her curled up on the couch with a book and a cup of tea, dinner growing cold on the counter. Mr. Peterson wanted changes to the entire third-floor design, and I couldn't leave until we figured it out. It's okay, Jasmine would reply, because she loved him and she understood that his career was important. I saved you a plate. In those early days, Ryan would make it up to her. He would take her out for breakfast the next morning, or surprise her with flowers, or spend the entire weekend focused entirely on her. The late nights felt like small sacrifices for a man who still looked at her like she hung the moon. But slowly, gradually, the apologies became shorter and the makeup gestures became rarer. The late nights became late evenings, became missed dinners, became Ryan stumbling home after Jasmine was already asleep, smelling like stress and coffee and exhaustion. How was your day? Became a question Jasmine stopped asking because the answer was always the same. Busy, stressful, overwhelming. Ryan would collapse into bed beside her and be asleep before she could tell him about her own day, about the new recipe she had tried or the funny customer at the bakery where she worked part-time while saving money for her own place. The second crack came when Jasmine's boss at the bakery offered to sell her the business. Mrs. Henderson was getting older and wanted to retire, and she had seen how much Jasmine loved the work, how naturally she connected with customers and how her creative touches had increased sales. It's a good deal, honey, Mrs. Henderson had said, sitting in the back office surrounded by the smell of fresh bread and vanilla. "I'll carry part of the loan myself and you can pay me back over 5 years. This place could really be something special with your vision." Jasmine had been so excited she could barely contain herself. Her own bakery, her dream finally within reach. She had rushed home that evening with a bottle of champagne and Ryan's favorite takeout, ready to celebrate and plan their future together. "Guess what happened today?" she had said when Ryan walked through the door at almost 10 o'clock, his tie loosened and his face tired. "Let me shower first, Jazz," he had said without really looking at her. "It's been a hell of a day." She had waited, keeping the food warm, polishing the champagne glasses, practicing how she would tell him the news. When he finally emerged from the bathroom in sweatpants and a t-shirt, she had practically bounced with excitement. "Mrs. Henderson wants to sell me the bakery," she had announced, spreading the business plan and financial papers across their dining room table like treasure maps. "I can finally have my own place, Ryan. We can finally start building something together." Ryan had looked at the papers with the same expression he might use for a pile of dirty laundry. "Jess, baby, this is a lot of money. Are you sure this is a good investment?" The word, investment, had hit Jasmine like cold water. This wasn't an investment to her. It was her dream, her passion, her chance to create something beautiful in the world. "It's what I've always wanted," she had said, trying to keep the hurt out of her voice. "You know that." "I know, but wanting something and being able to afford it are two different things," Ryan had said, sinking into a chair and rubbing his temples. "We just bought the house, we have student loans, my car is making that weird noise again. Maybe in a few years when we're more stable." "A few years?" Jasmine had repeated. "Ryan, this opportunity won't be here in a few years. This is happening now." "Look, I'm exhausted," Ryan had said, standing up and walking toward their bedroom. "Can we talk about this tomorrow when I can think straight?" But tomorrow had turned into next week, which had turned into next month, and every time Jasmine brought up the bakery, Ryan had found reasons why it wasn't the right time. Too risky. Too expensive. Too much work when they were both already busy. Mrs. Henderson had eventually sold to someone else, a young man with a business degree and family money who turned the cozy neighborhood bakery into a sterile chain coffee shop within 6 months. The third crack had been the night of Jasmine's birthday when Ryan had forgotten to make reservations at the restaurant they had talked about for weeks. They had ended up at a chain restaurant near their house, sitting in a booth under fluorescent lights while families with screaming children created chaos around them. "I'm sorry," Ryan had said, looking genuinely upset with himself. "Work has just been crazy, and I completely spaced on calling the restaurant." "It's okay," Jasmine had lied because by then she had gotten good at swallowing her disappointment. "This is fine." But it wasn't fine and they both knew it. The Ryan she had fallen in love with would never have forgotten her birthday dinner. That Ryan had written important dates in his phone with multiple reminders. That Ryan had planned surprises weeks in advance because he said her happiness was worth the effort. The fourth crack had been their second anniversary when Ryan had to work late on the night they were supposed to celebrate. The fifth crack had been the time he missed her company picnic because of a client emergency. The sixth crack had been when he stopped asking about her day because he was too tired to listen to the answer. By their third anniversary, the cracks had spread so wide that Jasmine felt like she was living with a stranger who happened to share her last name. They still said "I love you" before bed, but the words felt automatic, like brushing teeth or turning off lights. "Do you think we're okay?" Jasmine had asked one night as they lay in bed, not touching, both staring at the ceiling. "What do you mean?" Ryan had asked, though his tone suggested he knew exactly what she meant. "I mean us. This marriage. Do you think we're okay?" Ryan had been quiet for so long that Jasmine had thought he fell asleep. Finally, he had turned toward her in the darkness. "I think we're going through a rough patch," he had said carefully. "All couples do. It's normal." "Is it normal for me to feel like I'm married to someone who doesn't actually want to be married to me?" Jasmine had asked, the words coming out sharper than she intended. "That's not fair, Jazz," Ryan had said, and she could hear the defensiveness creeping into his voice. "I work hard to provide for us. Everything I do is for us." "No," Jasmine had said quietly. "Everything you do is for your career. There's a difference." They had fought that night, their first real fight since the wedding. Ryan had accused her of being unsupportive and not understanding the pressure he was under. Jasmine had accused him of using work as an excuse to avoid their marriage. In the morning, they had apologized and made up the way couples do, with careful words and tentative touches. But the fight had revealed a truth neither of them wanted to acknowledge. They had become two people living parallel lives that rarely intersected. The final crack had come 6 months ago, the night that had led them to this lawyer's office, this pile of divorce papers, this moment of reckoning. But sitting here now, watching Ryan's face as he remembered their beginning, Jasmine realized that maybe some cracks could be repaired. Maybe some things that seemed broken beyond fixing could be made whole again. If both people were willing to do the work. If both people still believed in the love that had brought them together in the first place. If both people were brave enough to try again. The memory of their final fight still made Jasmine's chest tighten with pain. It had been a Tuesday night in December 6 months ago, and snow was falling outside their bedroom window like tears from a gray sky. She had been waiting for Ryan to come home for 3 hours. Dinner was cold on the counter. His favorite chicken and rice that she had spent all afternoon perfecting. Candles were burned down to stubs on the dining room table. The bottle of wine she had opened to breathe was now just another reminder of her foolishness in thinking tonight would be different. Her phone had buzzed with another text. Running late. Start without me. Sorry. That single word, sorry, had become the soundtrack of their marriage. Sorry for being late. Sorry for missing dinner. Sorry for forgetting their plans. Sorry for not being present even when he was physically there. Jasmine had blown out the candles and put the food away, going through the motions she had repeated too many times to count. She had changed out of the red dress she had worn just for him and into comfortable pajamas, accepting that another evening would pass like ships in the night. When Ryan finally walked through the door at almost midnight, Jasmine had been sitting in their living room with a cup of tea and a book she wasn't really reading. "Hey baby," he had said, dropping his briefcase by the door and loosening his tie. "Sorry I'm so late. The Peterson project is killing me, and we had to completely redesign the lobby because they decided they want something more modern." "It's fine," Jasmine had said automatically, the lie sliding off her tongue like water. "Did you eat?" Ryan had asked, walking toward the kitchen. "I'm starving." "I made dinner," Jasmine had said quietly. "It's in the fridge." Ryan had paused in the doorway, something in her voice making him turn around. "You cooked?" "Jess, you didn't have to do that. You know I might be late on weeknights." "I know," she had said, still not looking up from her book. "I always know." "What's that supposed to mean?" Ryan had asked, and Jasmine could hear the defensiveness already creeping into his voice. "Nothing," she had said, because she was tired of fighting about the same things over and over again. "I'm going to bed." But as she had stood up to leave, Ryan had caught her arm gently. "Jess, talk to me. What's wrong?" And maybe it was the gentleness in his touch or the genuine concern in his voice, or just the fact that she was so tired of pretending everything was fine, but something inside Jasmine had snapped. "What's wrong?" she had repeated, turning to face him with 3 years of accumulated hurt blazing in her dark eyes. "What's wrong is that I cooked your favorite dinner and you missed it. Again. What's wrong is that I bought a new dress and did my hair and you didn't even notice. What's wrong is that I feel like I'm married to a ghost." "That's not fair," Ryan had said, dropping her arm. "You know how demanding my job is right now. I'm trying to make partner, Jess. I'm doing this for us." "No, you're not," Jasmine had shot back, her voice rising. "You're doing this for you. For your ego, for your career, for your idea of what success looks like. When was the last time you asked me what I wanted? When was the last time you cared about my dreams?" "I care about your dreams," Ryan had protested, but the words sounded hollow even to him. "Really? Then why don't you know that I applied for a small business loan last month? Why don't you know that I've been looking at empty storefronts for my bakery? Why don't you know that I cry myself to sleep most nights because I feel so alone in this marriage?" Ryan had stared at her like she was speaking a foreign language. "You applied for a loan? Jazz, we can't afford." "There it is," Jasmine had interrupted, laughing bitterly. "There's the real Ryan. The man who thinks he gets to make all the decisions about our life because he makes more money. The man who promised to support my dreams and then acts like they're too expensive to matter." "That's not what I meant," Ryan had said, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "I just meant that we need to be practical. We have a mortgage, we have bills. We have a life, Ryan." Jasmine had shouted, tears streaming down her face. "Or at least we're supposed to. But you're so busy building your career that you forgot to build our marriage." "I work hard so we can have a good life," Ryan had said, his own voice rising now. "I work hard so you don't have to worry about money, so we can have nice things, so we can have security." "I don't want nice things," Jasmine had cried. "I want my husband. I want the man who used to bring me coffee in bed on Sunday mornings. I want the man who used to ask about my day and actually listen to the answer. I want the man who used to make me feel like I was the most important thing in his world." "You are important to me," Ryan had said desperately. You're the most important thing in my life. Then why don't I feel like it? Jasmine had whispered, her anger dissolving into heartbreak. Why do I feel like I'm competing with your job for scraps of your attention? Why do I feel like I'm bothering you when I try to talk to you about anything that matters to me? Ryan had stood there in their living room, looking lost and confused and hurt. I don't know, he had admitted quietly. I don't know when everything got so complicated. It's not complicated, Ryan, Jasmine had said, wiping tears from her cheeks. It's actually very simple. Marriage is a choice you make every day. Love is a choice you make every day. And for months now, you've been choosing everything else. That's not true, Ryan had protested weakly. Isn't it? When was the last time you chose me over a work meeting? When was the last time you chose us over a client? When was the last time you chose our marriage over your career? Ryan had opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again because they both knew the truth. I love you, Jazz, he had said finally, his voice breaking. You have to know that I love you. I know you love me, Jasmine had replied, her heart shattering with every word. But I don't know if you love me enough. I don't know if you love me enough to fight for us. I don't know if you love me enough to change. I can change, Ryan had said desperately. I can be better. Just tell me what you need. I need you to want to change, Jasmine had said sadly. I need you to see that we're breaking apart and care enough to fix it. I need you to choose us without me having to beg you to. They had stood there in the wreckage of their conversation, two people who loved each other but had somehow lost the ability to make that love work in the daily reality of their shared life. What happens now? Ryan had asked the same question he would ask months later in the lawyer's office. I don't know, Jasmine had answered, the same words she would repeat when faced with divorce papers and the end of everything they had built together. That night, Ryan had slept in the guest room, and Jasmine had lain awake in their king-size bed that felt bigger and emptier than ever before. In the morning, she had packed a bag and gone to stay with her sister, telling Ryan she needed time to think. Time to think had turned into a week, then a month, then 6 months of living apart and trying to figure out if their marriage was worth saving. Now, sitting in Attorney Williams' office, Jasmine realized that all the thinking in the world couldn't answer the only question that really mattered. Did they still love each other enough to try again? The separation had been harder than Jasmine expected. Living in her sister Nicole's spare bedroom, surrounded by boxes of her belongings and the remnants of a life she wasn't sure she wanted to go back to, she had tried to build a routine that didn't include Ryan. She had found a job at a small cafe downtown, closer to Nicole's apartment, where she could use her baking skills and try to forget that she was a wife without a husband. The owner, Mrs. Garcia, was kind and understanding when Jasmine had explained her situation during the interview. Honey, we've all been there, Mrs. Garcia had said, her warm brown eyes full of sympathy. Sometimes you need to step away to see clearly. The job is yours for as long as you need it. Working at the cafe had given Jasmine purpose during the day, but the evenings were the hardest. Nicole would try to cheer her up with movies and wine and stories about her latest dating disasters, but nothing could fill the Ryan-shaped hole in Jasmine's routine. She had expected that living apart would make it easier to forget him, to move forward, to imagine a life without the man who had been her everything for so long. Instead, she saw him everywhere. The first encounter had been at the grocery store on a Wednesday evening. Jasmine had been in the pasta aisle, debating between spaghetti and penne, when she heard a familiar laugh from the next aisle over. Her heart had stopped, then started beating so fast she thought she might faint. She had peered around the corner like a spy in a bad movie and seen Ryan standing by the frozen foods, talking on his phone with a smile that she hadn't seen in months. He looked good, better than good. His hair was styled differently, shorter on the sides, and he was wearing a blue sweater that she had never seen before. A sweater that brought out his eyes and made him look younger, happier. Jasmine had ducked back behind the pasta display, her chest tight with an emotion she couldn't name. Was it jealousy? Relief? Regret? All she knew was that seeing Ryan happy without her had hurt more than she expected. She had abandoned her shopping cart and fled the store, driving home with tears streaming down her face and no explanation for why seeing her estranged husband's smile had felt like a knife to the heart. The second encounter had been at their old coffee shop, the place where they had first met. Jasmine had been meeting Nicole for lunch when she spotted Ryan sitting at their old table by the window, alone with his laptop and a cup of coffee that had probably gone cold an hour ago. He looked different again, tired, maybe, but focused in a way that reminded her of the early days of their relationship when he used to tell her about his building designs with such passion and excitement. His brow was furrowed in concentration, and he was sketching something on a napkin, the way he used to do when inspiration struck. Without thinking, Jasmine had walked over to his table. "Working on something interesting?" she had asked, trying to keep her voice casual despite the way her heart was pounding. Ryan had looked up, startled, and for a moment his face had lit up with genuine happiness at seeing her. "Jas, I didn't know you came here anymore." "I don't usually," she had admitted, sliding into the chair across from him before she could talk herself out of it. Nicole wanted to try their new sandwiches. "How is Nicole?" Ryan had asked, and Jasmine could tell he was genuinely interested, not just making small talk. "She's good. Dating a new guy who works at the bank. She thinks this one might actually stick around past the third date." Jasmine had surprised herself by laughing, and Ryan had smiled in response. "That's great. She deserves someone good." Ryan had paused, then looked down at his sketches. "How are you? I mean really, how are you doing?" The question had caught Jasmine off guard with its sincerity. "I'm okay," she had said automatically, then surprised herself by adding, "Actually, that's not true. I'm not okay. But I'm trying to figure out how to be." Ryan had nodded like he understood completely. "Yeah, me too." They had sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the first comfortable silence they had shared in months. Then Nicole had appeared at their table, looking back and forth between them with raised eyebrows. "Well, this is unexpected," Nicole had said, her voice carefully neutral. "Hi, Nicole," Ryan had said, standing up to give her a brief hug. "I was just leaving." "You don't have to leave because of me," Nicole had said, though her protective sister instincts were clearly on high alert. "I know," Ryan had said, gathering his laptop and papers. "I just have to get back to work." He had looked at Jasmine one more time. "It was good seeing you, Jas. Really good." After he left, Nicole had peppered Jasmine with questions about what they had talked about and how she was feeling and whether she was thinking about going back to him. But Jasmine hadn't had answers to any of those questions. All she knew was that seeing Ryan in their old place had felt both painful and right. The third encounter had been the most unexpected. Jasmine had been leaving work late one evening when her car wouldn't start. She had called Nicole, but her sister was on a date and couldn't come get her. She had been standing in the parking lot, trying to decide whether to call an Uber or walk the 10 blocks to Nicole's apartment, when a familiar truck had pulled up beside her. "Car trouble?" Ryan had asked, rolling down his window. "Battery's dead, I think," Jasmine had said, trying to ignore how her pulse quickened at the sight of him. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" "There's a new restaurant a few blocks over that I wanted to try," Ryan had explained, getting out of his truck. "Pop the hood. I have jumper cables." 20 minutes later, Jasmine's car was running again, and she was standing in the parking lot with her ex-husband, both of them covered in grease and laughing about how she had accidentally honked the horn while he was connecting the cables. "Thank you," she had said, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "You didn't have to stop." "Of course I did," Ryan had said, looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. "I'll always stop for you, Jas. No matter what happens between us." The words had hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning and possibility. For a moment, Jasmine had thought he might kiss her, and she had realized with startling clarity that she wanted him to. Instead, Ryan had stepped back and cleared his throat. "Drive safe," he had said. "And maybe get your battery checked this weekend." "I will," Jasmine had promised, though they both knew she was agreeing to more than just car maintenance. The fourth encounter had been at the farmer's market on a Saturday morning. Jasmine had been buying ingredients for a new bread recipe she wanted to try when she had spotted Ryan at the flower stand, carefully selecting a bouquet of sunflowers, her favorite flowers. She had hidden behind a display of organic vegetables and watched as he paid for the flowers, wondering who they were for. A girlfriend? A date? The thought had made her stomach twist with jealousy she had no right to feel. But then Ryan had walked straight to his truck and driven away, and Jasmine had followed him at a distance, curiosity overcoming her better judgment. She had watched from across the street as he had parked at the cemetery and walked toward a familiar headstone with the sunflowers in his hand. Her mother's grave. Jasmine had sat in her car and cried as she watched Ryan kneel beside her mother's headstone, placing the flowers carefully against the marble and staying there for almost an hour. Her mother had loved Ryan like a son, and Ryan had loved her mother like she was his own family. The fact that he was still visiting her grave, still bringing her flowers, still honoring that relationship even after everything that had happened between them, had broken something open in Jasmine's chest that she had been trying to keep locked away. The fifth and final encounter had been the one that led them both to the lawyer's office. Jasmine had been walking home from work when it started to rain. Not the gentle spring rain that was common in April, but a sudden downpour that soaked her to the skin in minutes. She had taken shelter under the awning of a bookstore, shivering and trying to call an Uber, when Ryan's truck had pulled up to the curb. "Get in," he had called through the open window. "I'll give you a ride." "I can call a car," Jasmine had protested even as she shivered in the cold rain. "Jazz, you're soaked and it's freezing. Just get in the truck." She had climbed into the passenger seat, acutely aware of how the familiar smell of his cologne mixed with the scent of rain and coffee filled the small space between them. "Thank you," she had said quietly as Ryan had turned up the heat and handed her his jacket. "No problem," he had replied, but his voice had been tight with an emotion she couldn't identify. They had driven in silence for several blocks before Ryan had suddenly pulled over and turned off the engine. "I can't do this anymore," he had said, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. "Do what?" Jasmine had asked, though part of her already knew. "Pretend that running into you doesn't turn my whole day upside down," Ryan had said, turning to look at her with raw honesty in his light brown eyes. "Pretend that I don't miss you so much it physically hurts. Pretend that I don't think about you every single day and wonder if I made the biggest mistake of my life by letting you walk away." Jasmine had stared at him, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it over the sound of rain on the truck's roof. "Ryan," she had started, but he had held up his hand. "I know I messed up," he had continued. "I know I chose everything else over you, over us. I know I took you for granted and made you feel like you didn't matter. But Jazz, you matter. You matter more than anything in the world, and I was too stupid and too scared to show you that when it counted." "Why are you telling me this now?" Jasmine had whispered. "Because I can't sign those divorce papers," Ryan had admitted. "I can't make it official, make it final, make it real. I can't let you go without fighting for us one more time." And that's how they had ended up in Attorney Williams' office, sitting across from each other with divorce papers between them and a lifetime of love and hurt and hope tangled up in their hearts. Attorney Williams cleared his throat politely, breaking the spell that had fallen over the room. "Perhaps I should give you both some privacy to discuss this matter," he said, standing up from his leather chair. "I'll be in the conference room next door. Take all the time you need." The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving Ryan and Jasmine alone with their memories and their pain and the papers that would end their marriage if either of them found the courage to sign them. "I saw you at the cemetery," Jasmine said suddenly, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "Last month. You were bringing flowers to my mom's grave." Ryan's eyes widened in surprise. "You were there?" "I followed you from the farmer's market," Jasmine admitted, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. "I know that sounds crazy, but I saw you buying sunflowers and I thought—" She trailed off, not wanting to admit that she had thought the flowers were for another woman. "You thought they were for someone else," Ryan said softly, reading her thoughts like he always used to be able to do. "Maybe," Jasmine whispered. "I've been visiting her every month since the funeral," Ryan said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know you probably think that's weird since we're separated and everything, but she was important to me. She was family." Jasmine felt tears prick her eyes. Her mother had died 8 months ago, just 2 months before their final fight, and Ryan's absence from the funeral had been one of the deepest cuts of all. But knowing that he had been honoring her mother's memory all this time, even after everything that had happened between them, touched something deep in her heart. "She would have liked that," Jasmine said quietly. "She always said you were the son she never had. She told me once that I better never break your heart," Ryan said with a sad smile. "She said if I ever hurt you, she would haunt me from beyond the grave." "Mama never did make idle threats," Jasmine said, managing a small laugh through her tears. "I think about her a lot," Ryan continued. "About what she would say if she could see us now, sitting in a lawyer's office ready to throw away everything we built together. She would probably tell us both to stop being stupid and remember why we fell in love in the first place," Jasmine said, because that was exactly what her mother would have said. "Your mom was a smart woman," Ryan said, leaning back in his chair and studying Jasmine's face like he was trying to memorize it. "She knew things about love that it took me too long to figure out." "What things?" "That love isn't just a feeling you have for someone," Ryan said slowly. "It's a choice you make every day, every hour, every moment. It's choosing to put someone else's happiness before your own comfort. It's choosing to show up even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." Jasmine felt her breath catch. "That sounds like something she would say." "She said it to me," Ryan admitted. "The last time I talked to her about a week before she died. She called me at work and told me she needed to talk to me about something important." "What did she say?" Ryan was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant with memory. "She said she could see that we were struggling and she was worried about us. She said marriage wasn't like the movies, where love conquers all without any effort. She said real love was work, but it was the kind of work that made you better instead of wearing you down. She never told me she talked to you, Jasmine said, wondering what else her mother had seen that she had missed. She made me promise not to tell you, Ryan said. She said some conversations were between her and me, man to man. She said she could see that I was letting fear make my decisions instead of love. Fear of what? Fear of not being good enough for you, Ryan said simply. Fear that if I wasn't successful enough, rich enough, important enough, you would realize you could do better and leave me. Jasmine stared at him in amazement. You thought I would leave you if you weren't successful? I thought you deserved the world, Ryan said. I thought if I could just work hard enough, achieve enough, make enough money, I could give you everything you wanted. I thought providing for you was the same thing as loving you. But Ryan, Jasmine said, leaning forward in her chair, all I ever wanted was you. Not your money, not your success, not some perfect life. Just you. I know that now, Ryan said, his voice breaking. Your mom tried to tell me, but I was too stubborn to listen. She said you didn't need me to be perfect. She said you needed me to be present. She was right, Jasmine whispered. She said something else too, Ryan continued. She said that if I kept choosing work over you, I would lose the best thing that ever happened to me. She said some chances don't come twice, and if I wasn't careful, I would regret it for the rest of my life. And what did you say? I told her I would try to do better, Ryan said, tears streaming down his face now. But then she died, and I was so lost in my grief and guilt that I made everything worse instead of better. The night of our big fight, I was coming home to tell you that I had requested a transfer to a different team at work, one with better hours and less travel. I was coming home to tell you that I had learned my lesson, that I was ready to put us first. But you never got the chance, Jasmine realized. By the time I got home, you were so hurt and angry, and rightfully so, that it felt too little too late, Ryan said. And maybe it was. Maybe I had already broken us beyond repair. Jasmine looked at this man she had loved for so long, seeing him clearly for the first time in months. Not the distant workaholic who had replaced her husband, but Ryan. Her Ryan. Flawed and human and struggling, but still the man who visited her mother's grave and remembered her favorite flowers. What would you do differently? She asked quietly. If we could start over, what would you do differently? Everything, Ryan said immediately. I would choose you over every client, every meeting, every opportunity that took me away from us. I would ask about your dreams and help you chase them instead of dismissing them as impractical. I would show up for you the way you always showed up for me. It's not that simple, Jasmine said, though her heart was beating faster with every word he spoke. I know it's not, Ryan agreed. I know I can't just apologize and expect you to forget 3 years of feeling neglected and unimportant. I know trust is earned, not given. But Jazz, I'm asking for a chance to earn it back. What about your career? What about making partner? I already turned down the promotion, Ryan said, and Jasmine's eyes widened in shock. You what? Last month when they offered me the partnership. I turned it down. The hours would have been even worse, the travel even more demanding. I realized that all the success in the world doesn't mean anything if you don't have someone to share it with. Jasmine felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. Ryan had worked toward that partnership for years. It had been his dream, his goal, the thing that had driven him to work so many late nights and weekends. But that's what you always wanted, she said in amazement. No, Ryan said firmly. What I always wanted was a life with you. The partnership was just something I thought I needed to deserve that life. Your mom was right, I was letting fear make my decisions. Fear that I wasn't enough just as I am. Ryan, Jasmine started, but he held up his hand. I'm not telling you this to manipulate you or to make you feel sorry for me, he said. I'm telling you because I want you to know that I've changed. Not just my priorities but my understanding of what matters. And what matters is you. What matters is us. Jasmine looked down at the divorce papers, her signature line still blank, her future still unwritten. 6 months ago, she had been so sure that ending their marriage was the right choice. Now, sitting in this office with Ryan laying his heart bare, she wasn't sure of anything except that she still loved him. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Of what? Of believing you. Of hoping that things can be different. Of getting hurt again. She looked up at him with tears in her eyes. I'm scared that you'll go back to putting work first the moment things get comfortable between us. I'm scared too, Ryan said. I'm scared that I've hurt you so badly that you can't forgive me. I'm scared that I've lost my chance with the only woman I've ever loved. I'm scared that I'll spend the rest of my life regretting that I was too stupid to appreciate what I had when I had it. They sat in silence, two people balanced on the edge of a decision that would shape the rest of their lives. The late afternoon sun was streaming through the office windows, painting everything in shades of gold and possibility. What happens if we try again and it doesn't work? Jasmine asked. Then at least we'll know we gave it everything we had, Ryan said. At least we'll know we fought for us instead of giving up. And what happens if it does work? Ryan smiled for the first time since he had walked into the office, and Jasmine's heart fluttered at the sight of it. Then we get to fall in love all over again, he said. Then we get to build something even better than what we had before because we'll be building it with wisdom instead of just hope. Jasmine picked up the pen one more time, her hand steadier now than it had been all afternoon. But instead of signing her name on the divorce papers, she slowly tore them in half. I want to try again, she said, her voice strong and sure. But I need you to know that this isn't me just hoping things will magically get better. This is me choosing to fight for us, but I need you to fight too. I will, Ryan promised, reaching across the table to take her hand. I'll fight for us every day for the rest of my life if you'll let me. Okay, Jasmine said, feeling lighter than she had in months. Let's try again. 3 weeks after tearing up the divorce papers, Jasmine found herself standing in front of her bedroom mirror, trying to decide what to wear for her first official date with her own husband in over 6 months. It felt strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Ryan had called her the day after their meeting at the lawyer's office, his voice nervous and hopeful as he asked if she would like to go to dinner with him on Friday night. I know this is weird, he had said, and she could picture him running his hand through his hair the way he always did when he was anxious. Dating my own wife. But I want to do this right, Jas. I want to court you all over again. Court me? Jasmine had laughed, the first genuine laugh she had had in months. You know what I mean, Ryan had said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. I want to win you back properly. I want to remind you why you fell in love with me in the first place. Now, standing in Nicole's spare bedroom with 3 different dresses laid out on the bed, Jasmine felt like a teenager getting ready for prom. She had chosen a blue dress that brought out her eyes, simple but elegant, with a skirt that swirled when she walked. You look beautiful, Nicole said from the doorway, leaning against the frame with her arms crossed and a knowing smile on her face. I'm nervous, Jasmine admitted, applying lipstick with shaking hands. Good nervous or bad nervous? I don't know, Jasmine said honestly. Both maybe? I feel like I'm going on a first date, but also like I'm about to have dinner with a stranger who happens to know all my secrets. That's because you are, Nicole said, coming into the room to sit on the bed. You're both different people than you were when you separated. You've both grown and changed. In a way, you are starting over. What if we don't have anything to talk about? Jasmine worried. What if we sit there in awkward silence, realizing we don't actually like each other anymore? Then you'll know, Nicole said gently. But Jas, I've watched you two together for years. Even when you were fighting, even when you were hurt and angry, there was still something there. Some spark that never quite went out. What if it's not enough? What if it is? Ryan picked her up at exactly 7 o'clock, looking handsome in a dark blue button-down shirt that matched her dress. He had brought her a single sunflower, her favorite, and the gesture was so sweet and thoughtful that Jasmine felt tears prick her eyes. You look incredible, he said when she opened the door, and the way he looked at her made her feel like the most beautiful woman in the world. Thank you, she said, accepting the flower and trying to ignore the way her heart raced when their fingers touched. You clean up pretty well yourself. He had chosen a small Italian restaurant she had never been to, intimate and cozy with soft lighting and jazz music playing in the background. It was the kind of place that encouraged conversation, the kind of place where you could talk for hours without realizing how much time had passed. I've been wanting to try this place for months, Ryan said as they were seated at a corner table. Mrs. Garcia at your cafe recommended it. You talked to Mrs. Garcia? Jasmine asked, surprised. I may have stopped by the cafe a few times, Ryan admitted, looking slightly embarrassed. I wanted to make sure you were okay, and I thought maybe if I bought enough coffee, she would tell me how you were doing. Ryan Coleman, were you spying on me? Jasmine asked, trying to sound stern but failing to hide her amusement. Not spying, Ryan protested. More like concerned observation. There's a difference. What did Mrs. Garcia tell you? That you were sad but trying to hide it. That you worked too hard and didn't eat enough lunch. That you made the best cinnamon rolls she had ever tasted but you never smiled when customers complimented them. Jasmine felt her chest tighten. I didn't know you cared enough to check on me. Jas, Ryan said seriously, reaching across the table to take her hand, I never stopped caring about you. Even when we were fighting, even when we were living apart, even when I thought we were over for good, I never stopped loving you or worrying about you or wanting you to be happy. Then why did it take us almost signing divorce papers to have this conversation? Jasmine asked, not pulling her hand away but not squeezing back either. Because I'm an idiot, Ryan said simply. Because I was so focused on what I thought you needed, financial security, a nice house, a successful husband, that I forgot to ask what you actually wanted. What do you think I wanted? You, Ryan said without hesitation. You wanted me to be present with you, to listen to you, to support your dreams the way you supported mine. You wanted a partner, not a provider. Jasmine felt something loosen in her chest. It took you 6 months to figure that out? It took me 6 months to stop being angry and start being honest, Ryan corrected. I was angry at you for leaving, angry at myself for messing up, angry at the whole situation. But anger was easier than admitting that I had failed at the most important thing in my life. Marriage isn't pass or fail, Ryan, Jasmine said gently. It's not a test you can study for or a project you can perfect. It's two people choosing each other every day, even when it's hard. I know that now, Ryan said. Your mom tried to tell me but I had to learn it the hard way. They ordered dinner, pasta for her, chicken for him, a bottle of wine to share, and as the evening progressed, Jasmine found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in months. This was the Ryan she had fallen in love with, the man who listened when she talked, who asked thoughtful questions, who made her laugh until her sides hurt. Tell me about the cafe, Ryan said over dessert. What's it like working there? It's good, Jasmine said, twirling her spoon in the tiramisu they were sharing. Mrs. Garcia is wonderful and I love the customers. But it's not mine, you know? I'm still just working for someone else's dream. Do you still want your own bakery? Every day, Jasmine admitted. I have notebooks full of recipes, ideas for decorating, business plans I've written and rewritten. Sometimes I drive by empty storefronts and imagine what I would do with the space. What would you call it? Ryan asked, and Jasmine could see that he was genuinely interested, not just making conversation. Sweet Dreams Bakery, she said, feeling slightly embarrassed. I know it's cheesy but... It's perfect, Ryan interrupted. It's exactly what a bakery should be called. Sweet dreams, sweet treats, sweet memories. I love it. Really? Really? And I want to help you make it happen if you'll let me. Jasmine looked at him carefully. What do you mean? I mean I want to support your dream the way you always supported mine, Ryan said. I have some money saved up from the years I was working too much. Money I was saving for some vague future that didn't include the most important person in my life. I want to invest it in something that actually matters. Ryan, I can't let you. It's not charity, Jazz, Ryan said firmly. It's not even a gift. It's an investment in us, in our future, in the life we want to build together. Partners support each other's dreams. That's what your mom meant when she said love is a choice. Jasmine felt tears welling up in her eyes. You would really do that? Even after everything that's happened? Especially after everything that's happened, Ryan said. I want to prove to you that I've changed, that I can put us first. I want to show you that your dreams matter to me as much as my own. What about your job? Your career? I'll still work, Ryan said with a shrug. But I transferred to the residential design team. Better hours, less travel, more creativity. I'll still be doing what I love, but I'll be home for dinner most nights. I'll be present for our life together. You really did change everything, Jasmine said in amazement. I changed my priorities, Ryan corrected. And my priorities start and end with you. They walked slowly back to Nicole's apartment, taking the long way through the downtown streets they used to explore together when they were dating. The spring air was warm and sweet, full of the promise of summer and new beginnings. I had a really good time tonight, Jasmine said when they reached Nicole's front door. Good enough for a second date? Ryan asked hopefully. Maybe, Jasmine said with a teasing smile. But you'll have to ask me properly. Ryan stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne and see the flecks of gold in his light brown eyes. Jasmine Coleman, he said formally, would you do me the honor of going out with me again? I would like that very much, she said softly. Good, Ryan said, and then he leaned down and kissed her, soft and sweet and full of all the love they had thought they had lost. When they broke apart, both of them were breathing hard and smiling like teenagers. I love you, Jazz, Ryan said, resting his forehead against hers. I never stopped loving you. I love you too, Jasmine whispered, and meant it with every fiber of her being. So what happens now? Ryan asked, the question that had haunted them both for months. Now we take it one day at a time, Jasmine said. We date each other, we figure out how to be married again, and we build something even better than what we had before. I like the sound of that, Ryan said, kissing her forehead gently. Me too, Jasmine agreed, finally feeling like she was home. The news of their reconciliation spread through both families like wildfire, and the reactions were as varied as they were vocal. Jasmine discovered this firsthand when she arrived at Nicole's apartment the next evening to find her sister waiting with crossed arms and a concerned expression. We need to talk, Nicole said before Jasmine had even closed the door behind her. Hello to you too, Jasmine said, hanging up her purse and noticing that Nicole had been pacing. The living room looked like a tornado had hit it, with magazines scattered on the coffee table and empty coffee cups stacked on every surface. Jazz, I love you, you know that, Nicole began, running her hands through her hair in a gesture that reminded Jasmine painfully of Ryan. But I have to ask, are you sure about this? Are you really sure you want to try again with Ryan? Where is this coming from? Jasmine asked, sinking onto the couch and pulling a throw pillow into her lap. Mom called me this morning, Nicole said, and Jasmine's heart sank. Their mother-in-law, Patricia Coleman, was a sweet woman, but she had strong opinions about everything, especially when it came to her only son. What did she say? She's thrilled, of course, Nicole said, finally sitting down across from Jasmine. She thinks you two are meant to be together, that this separation was just a bump in the road, that love conquers all, you know how she is. That doesn't sound like something that would upset you, Jasmine said carefully. It's not what she said, it's what she didn't say, Nicole replied. When I asked her if she thought Ryan had really changed, she got all defensive and started talking about how hard he's been working on himself, how much he regrets everything, how he's not the same man who let you down. And Jazz, she's his mother. Of course she believes he's changed. Of course she wants you two to work things out. But that doesn't mean it's the right thing for you. Jasmine felt a familiar tightness in her chest. You don't think I should give him another chance? I think you should be careful, Nicole said gently. I think you should protect your heart while you're figuring this out. I was here for all those nights when you cried yourself to sleep. I was here when you couldn't eat because you were so heartbroken. I was here when you felt like you weren't worth fighting for. That's not fair, Jasmine said quietly. Isn't it? Jess, I watched you lose yourself in that marriage. I watched you make excuse after excuse for him while he chose everything else over you. And now, after one romantic dinner and some pretty words, you're ready to go back to that. It's not like that, Jasmine protested, though she could hear the uncertainty in her own voice. Then what is it like? Nicole challenged. Because from where I'm sitting it looks like the same pattern. Ryan realizes he's about to lose you, so he says all the right things and makes all the right gestures, and you believe him because you want to believe him. He turned down the partnership, Nicole, Jasmine said, trying to make her sister understand. He changed jobs, he's been visiting Mom's grave, he wants to help me open my bakery. Those aren't just words. They're good first steps, Nicole agreed. But Jazz, changing jobs is easy compared to changing who you are as a person. And Ryan's pattern has always been putting work first when the pressure gets high. What happens when his new job gets stressful? What happens when he has a demanding client or a tight deadline? Jasmine didn't have an answer for that, because she had been wondering the same thing herself. The conversation with Nicole was still weighing on her mind when she met Ryan for their second date 2 days later. He had suggested a picnic in the park, something casual and relaxed, and he had brought homemade sandwiches and her favorite cookies from the bakery where they first met. You seem quiet, Ryan observed as they spread their blanket under a large oak tree. Everything okay? Nicole's worried about me, Jasmine admitted, unwrapping her sandwich without much appetite. She thinks I'm making a mistake. Ryan's face fell. What did she say? She's concerned that you'll go back to your old patterns when things get stressful, Jasmine said honestly. She's worried that I'm setting myself up to get hurt again. And what do you think? Ryan asked carefully. I think she has a point, Jasmine said, meeting his eyes directly. I think the easy part is saying you've changed. The hard part is proving it when life gets complicated. Ryan nodded slowly. You're right. And Nicole's right to be protective of you. I hurt you badly and she watched it happen. I can't expect her to trust me just because I say I'm different. So what do we do about it? We take it slow, Ryan said simply. We prove to everyone, including ourselves, that this is real. We don't rush back into living together or pretend that everything is fixed overnight. We date, we rebuild trust, and we show your family that I'm serious about changing. That could take months, Jasmine pointed out. I have the rest of my life, Ryan said seriously. If it takes months or years or however long you need to feel secure in us again, then that's what it takes. Their peaceful picnic was interrupted by the sound of Jasmine's phone ringing. She glanced at the screen and groaned when she saw her father's name. "I should take this," she said apologetically, walking a few steps away from their blanket. "Hi, Daddy," she said, trying to sound cheerful. "Jasmine, baby girl," her father's deep voice rumbled through the phone. "I heard some interesting news from your sister." "I can imagine," Jasmine said, watching Ryan pretend not to listen while he packed up their lunch. "You want to tell me what's going on with you and that boy?" Jasmine smiled despite herself. Her father had called Ryan, "that boy," for the entire 5 years they had been together, even though Ryan was 32 years old and 6 feet tall. "We're trying to work things out, Daddy," she said simply. Her father said, and Jasmine could picture him leaning back in his favorite recliner with his arms crossed. "And you think that's a good idea? After all the tears you cried over him?" "I think it's worth trying," Jasmine said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Baby girl, you know I love you more than anything in this world," her father continued. "And you know I want you to be happy. But I also don't want to see you get hurt again." "I know, Daddy." "That boy broke your heart," her father said bluntly. "He made promises he didn't keep and he took you for granted. Now he comes back around with some flowers and sweet talk, and you're ready to forget all that." "It's not that simple," Jasmine protested, but she could hear her own doubts creeping into her voice. "Maybe not," her father agreed. "But answer me this, what's different now? What's changed that makes you think it'll work this time?" Jasmine looked over at Ryan, who was sitting quietly on the blanket, giving her space for the conversation but close enough that she could see the concern in his eyes. "He says he's changed his priorities," she said finally. "Says," her father repeated. "Baby girl, people can say anything. What's he showing you?" It was a fair question and one that Jasmine had been asking herself. Ryan had turned down the partnership and transferred jobs, but those were just job changes. The real test would come when life got stressful, when he had to choose between work and their relationship again. "I have to go, Daddy," she said. "But I love you." "I love you too, baby girl. Just be careful with your heart, okay? You only get one." When Jasmine returned to the blanket, Ryan was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "Your dad's not thrilled about us getting back together, I'm guessing," he said. "He's worried," Jasmine admitted, sitting back down beside him. "Everyone's worried. What about you? Are you worried?" Jasmine considered the question seriously. "Yes," she said finally. "I'm terrified. I'm terrified that I'm making the same mistake twice. I'm terrified that you'll break my heart again. I'm terrified that everyone I love is right to be concerned." Ryan reached for her hand and this time she let him take it. "I'm terrified too," he admitted. "I'm terrified that I've broken us too badly to fix. I'm terrified that I'll mess this up again. I'm terrified that you'll wake up one day and realize you deserve better than me." "So where does that leave us?" Jasmine asked. "I think it leaves us being honest about how hard this is going to be," Ryan said. "I think it leaves us acknowledging that everyone who loves us has good reasons to be skeptical. And I think it leaves us deciding if we love each other enough to do the work anyway." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching families play on the playground and couples walk their dogs along the park paths. The afternoon sun was warm on their faces, and for a moment, Jasmine could almost imagine that they were just another happy couple enjoying a perfect day. "I want to meet with your family," Ryan said suddenly. "What?" "I want to sit down with Nicole and your dad and anyone else who's worried about us," Ryan explained. "I want to listen to their concerns and answer their questions. I want them to see that I'm serious about making this work." "Ryan, you don't have to do that," Jasmine said, touched by the offer but worried about the potential disaster of such a meeting. "Yes, I do," Ryan said firmly. "These people love you and they're trying to protect you from getting hurt again. I respect that. I want them to know that I respect that." "My dad might not be very nice to you," Jasmine warned. "I can handle it," Ryan said with a small smile. "I probably deserve whatever he wants to say to me. And Nicole can be pretty blunt when she's in protective sister mode." "Good," Ryan said. "I want them to be blunt. I want them to ask the hard questions and hold me accountable. I want to prove to them, and to you, that I'm not the same man who let you down." That evening, Jasmine called Nicole and asked if she would be willing to meet with Ryan. Her sister was hesitant at first, but eventually agreed when Jasmine explained that Ryan had requested the meeting himself. "He wants to hear your concerns," Jasmine told her. "He wants to answer your questions honestly." "Okay," Nicole said slowly. "But I'm not going to go easy on him just because he's being cooperative. I wouldn't expect you to. The meeting was set for the following Sunday at Nicole's apartment. Jasmine's father agreed to drive down from his house 2 hours away, and even Ryan's mother, Patricia, asked if she could attend when she heard about it. "I think it's wonderful that Ryan wants to address everyone's concerns," Patricia had said when she called Jasmine. "It shows how committed he is to making this work." "Or it shows how desperate he is," Nicole had muttered when Jasmine relayed the conversation. As Sunday approached, Jasmine found herself getting more and more anxious. What if the meeting went badly? What if her family's concerns convinced her that she was making a mistake? What if Ryan couldn't handle the pressure of defending their relationship? But when Sunday arrived and everyone gathered in Nicole's living room, Ryan surprised her by being calm and confident. He thanked everyone for coming and for caring enough about Jasmine to voice their concerns. "I know I have a lot to prove," he said, looking around the room at the faces of people who loved Jasmine and had watched him hurt her. "I know that words are easy and actions are hard. But I want you to know that I'm committed to doing whatever it takes to earn your trust again, and more importantly to earn Jasmine's trust again." For the next 2 hours, Ryan answered every question with honesty and humility. He acknowledged his mistakes, accepted responsibility for the pain he had caused, and laid out concrete plans for how he intended to be a better husband. When Nicole asked him what would happen if his new job became demanding, Ryan didn't make empty promises about never working late again. Instead, he talked about communication, boundaries, and making sure that Jasmine always knew she was his first priority. When Jasmine's father asked him why Jasmine should believe he had really changed, Ryan didn't get defensive or make excuses. He admitted that she shouldn't believe him based on words alone, and that he was prepared to spend as long as it took proving himself through his actions. Even Patricia, who had been ready to defend her son, found herself impressed by his maturity and self-awareness. By the end of the meeting, the mood in the room had shifted from skeptical to cautiously hopeful. Everyone still had concerns, but they could see that Ryan was serious about making changes. "I'm proud of you," Jasmine told him as they walked to his truck after the meeting. "That couldn't have been easy." "It wasn't," Ryan admitted. "But it was necessary. The people who love you deserve to know that I'm not going to hurt you again." "You can't promise that," Jasmine said softly. "Nobody can promise that they'll never hurt the person they love." "You're right," Ryan said, stopping beside his truck and turning to face her. "But I can promise that I'll never stop fighting for us. I can promise that I'll never take you for granted again. And I can promise that if I ever do hurt you, it won't be because I was too selfish or too scared to put our marriage first." Looking into his eyes, Jasmine saw the man she had fallen in love with all those years ago, but also someone new. Someone who had learned from his mistakes and was ready to do better. "Okay," she said, stepping closer to him. "I believe you." "Yeah?" Ryan asked hopefully. "Yeah," Jasmine confirmed, rising up on her toes to kiss him softly. "Let's keep trying." 6 weeks into their reconciliation, life was settling into a comfortable rhythm that made Jasmine almost forget they had ever been apart. Ryan was keeping his promises. He came home for dinner most nights, he asked about her day and actually listened to the answers, and he had already helped her submit loan applications for 3 different banks for her bakery dream. They had been taking things slowly as promised. Jasmine was still living with Nicole, and they were officially dating rather than jumping back into married life. But the connection between them was growing stronger every day, and Jasmine was starting to believe that maybe they really could make it work this time. That's when the test came. It was a Thursday evening, and Ryan was supposed to pick her up at 7 for dinner at their favorite Thai restaurant. At 6:30, Jasmine was putting the finishing touches on her makeup when her phone rang. "Hey," Ryan's voice came through the speaker, and she could immediately tell something was wrong. He sounded stressed and harried, the way he used to sound during his worst days at the old job. "Hi," Jasmine said, her stomach already starting to sink. "Are you okay?" "I'm so sorry, Jazz, but I'm going to be late tonight," Ryan said, and she could hear voices and commotion in the background. "There's been a huge problem with the Morrison project and the client is furious. The whole design team is here trying to figure out what went wrong." Jasmine closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to push down the familiar feeling of disappointment that was rising in her chest. "How late?" she asked, proud of herself for keeping her voice steady. "I don't know," Ryan admitted, and she could hear the frustration in his voice. "Maybe an hour? Maybe 2? The client wants answers tonight, and if we don't fix this, the whole project could fall apart." "Ryan," Jasmine said carefully, "the Morrison project isn't your responsibility anymore. You transferred to residential design, remember?" "I know, but I helped design the original plans before I transferred, and now there's some kind of structural issue that the new team can't figure out. They need me here, Jess." People's jobs could be on the line if this goes south. Jasmine felt like she was having déjà vu. How many times had she heard this exact speech over the years? How many dinners had been cancelled because Ryan was the only person who could solve some crisis at work? Okay, she said quietly. I understand. Do you? Ryan asked, and she could hear the desperation in his voice. Jazz, please don't be upset. This is different from before. This is a genuine emergency, not just me choosing work over you. I said I understand, Jasmine repeated, but she could hear the chill in her own voice. I'll make it up to you, Ryan promised. Tomorrow night I'll take you somewhere special. Anywhere you want to go. Sure, Jasmine said, because what else could she say? I'll talk to you later. She hung up the phone and stared at herself in Nicole's bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at her was wearing a blue dress that Ryan loved, makeup carefully applied, hair styled in soft waves. She looked like someone who was ready for a romantic evening with the man she loved. Instead, she looked like someone who had been stood up. Jazz. Nicole's voice came from the hallway. Ryan's here. For a moment, Jasmine felt confused. She had just gotten off the phone with him saying he would be late. But then she heard footsteps on the stairs and a knock on the bathroom door. Jazz? Can I come in? Jasmine opened the door to find Ryan standing in the hallway, still wearing his work clothes but holding a bag of takeout from their favorite Thai place and a bouquet of flowers. I thought you had to work late, she said, confused. I did, Ryan said, stepping into the bathroom and setting the food on the counter. But then I remembered what your dad asked me at that family meeting. He asked me what was different this time, what had changed that would make our marriage work. Okay, Jasmine said slowly. And I realized that the answer isn't that I'll never have work emergencies again, Ryan continued. The answer is how I handle them. The old Ryan would have stayed at the office until midnight trying to solve everyone else's problems. The new Ryan told his boss that I had already transferred out of commercial design, that the new team needed to figure it out themselves, and that I had a commitment to my wife that I wasn't going to break. Jasmine stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. You left? In the middle of a crisis. I left in the middle of someone else's crisis, Ryan corrected. A crisis that I was not responsible for solving. A crisis that was being used as an excuse to pull me back into my old patterns. But what if the project fails? What if people lose their jobs? Then the commercial design team will figure out how to fix it the way they're paid to do, Ryan said simply. Jess, there will always be a crisis at work. There will always be a client emergency or a deadline catastrophe or some project that only I can save. But if I keep responding to those emergencies the way I used to, then I haven't really changed anything. Jasmine felt tears welling up in her eyes. You really chose me over work. I chose us over work, Ryan corrected, pulling her into his arms. I chose our future over my past habits. I chose keeping my promises to you over being the hero at the office. What did your boss say when you left? He wasn't happy, Ryan admitted with a rueful smile. But he also knew that I had already transferred out of that department. He knew that calling me in tonight was a favor, not an obligation. And you're okay with that? With potentially damaging your reputation at work? Jazz, my reputation at work doesn't matter if I don't have a life worth living outside of work, Ryan said seriously. I spent 3 years building a career and destroying a marriage. I'm not making that mistake again. They ended up eating Thai food on Nicole's couch, talking and laughing like they used to in the early days of their relationship. But there was something different about this evening, something that felt like a turning point. I'm proud of you, Jasmine said as they finished their pad thai. I know that couldn't have been easy walking away from work like that. It was the easiest decision I've ever made, Ryan said, pulling her closer to him on the couch. Because the alternative was disappointing you again, and I can't live with that. Even if the project fails and people blame you? Even then, Ryan said without hesitation. Jess, I love my job but I love you more. I like being good at what I do but I need to be good at being your husband more. You are good at being my husband, Jasmine said softly. You're getting better at it every day. I want to move back home, Ryan said suddenly, and Jasmine's heart skipped a beat. Ryan. I know we said we'd take things slow, he interrupted gently. And if you're not ready, that's okay. But Jazz, I miss falling asleep next to you. I miss waking up to your face. I miss sharing a home with the woman I love. Jasmine looked at this man who had just walked away from a work crisis to keep a dinner date with her, who had chosen their relationship over his career reputation, who was looking at her like she was the most important thing in his world. I miss that too, she admitted. But I'm scared. Of what? Of going backwards? Of falling back into old patterns? of getting comfortable and letting our problems slip back in. Then let's make sure that doesn't happen, Ryan said. Let's set up rules and boundaries. Let's schedule regular check-ins with each other. Let's go to counseling together to make sure we're building a strong foundation. You'd be willing to go to counseling? Jazz, I'd be willing to do whatever it takes to make sure we don't end up in a lawyer's office again, Ryan said seriously. I'd be willing to do whatever it takes to make sure you never doubt that you're my first priority. Jasmine thought about Nicole's spare bedroom, about living out of boxes and feeling like a guest in someone else's life. She thought about the house she and Ryan had bought together, the home they had filled with dreams and laughter before everything went wrong. But mostly she thought about the man sitting beside her, who had just proven that he really had changed, that he really was committed to putting their marriage first. Okay, she said, her heart pounding with excitement and terror. Let's go home. Really? Ryan asked, his face lighting up with hope. Really? Jasmine confirmed. But we're definitely doing the counseling thing. And we're setting up those boundaries. And if you ever choose work over me again. I won't, Ryan interrupted, pulling her into a kiss that tasted like possibility and forever. I promise you, Jazz. I won't. 3 months later, Jasmine stood in the kitchen of their house, mixing batter for chocolate chip cookies and listening to Ryan hum while he assembled a bookshelf in the living room. The afternoon sun was streaming through the windows, and everything felt perfectly, wonderfully normal. The transition back to living together had been easier than either of them expected. The counseling sessions with Dr. Martinez had helped them develop better communication skills and establish boundaries that protected their relationship from outside pressures. They had learned how to fight fairly, how to express their needs clearly, and how to prioritize their marriage even when life got complicated. Ryan had been true to his word about putting their relationship first. When work emergencies arose, he handled them during business hours or delegated them to other team members. When clients demanded after-hours meetings, he politely but firmly explained that his evenings were reserved for his personal life. And when his old boss had tried to lure him back to commercial design with promises of partnership and higher salary, Ryan had declined without even discussing it with Jasmine first. I already have everything I want, he had told her that night over dinner. More money or status can't compete with being happy. Jasmine's bakery dream was finally becoming reality too. With Ryan's financial support and his unwavering encouragement, she had secured a loan and found the perfect space downtown. A corner storefront with big windows and enough room for both baking and a small cafe area. They spent their weekends painting walls and installing equipment, working side by side to build something beautiful together. Sweet Dreams Bakery was set to open in 2 weeks, and Jasmine had never been more excited or more nervous about anything in her life. Jazz. Ryan's voice came from the living room. Can you come here for a minute? I'm in the middle of cookies, she called back, but she could hear something strange in his voice that made her wipe her hands on her apron and walk toward the living room. She found him standing in the middle of the room, surrounded by pieces of the bookshelf he had been assembling, holding a small velvet box in his hands. Ryan, she said, her heart starting to race. What's that? It's a new beginning, he said, his voice shaking slightly with emotion. Jazz, we've been married for 3 years, but I feel like we're just now learning how to be married. I feel like we're just now becoming the people we're supposed to be together. What are you doing? Jasmine whispered, though she was starting to understand. I'm asking you to marry me again, Ryan said, dropping to one knee in their living room, surrounded by the life they had built and rebuilt together. Not because we have to, not because it's expected, but because I choose you. Every day, every moment, every breath, I choose you. The box in his hands was different from the one he had used 3 years ago. This ring was simpler, more elegant, with a band that wrapped around like infinity. Jasmine Coleman, Ryan continued, his eyes bright with tears, you have taught me what love really means. You've shown me that marriage isn't about being perfect, it's about being willing to grow together. You've shown me that partnership means supporting each other's dreams, not just tolerating them. Ryan, Jasmine breathed, her own tears starting to fall. I know we're already married, he said with a shaky laugh. I know this is crazy. But I want to promise you again with everything I've learned and everything I've become. I want to vow to love you better this time, to choose you consistently this time, to build a life with you that honors both of our dreams. Yes, Jasmine said without hesitation, her heart so full she thought it might burst. Yes, I'll marry you again. Yes, I choose you too. Ryan slipped the new ring onto her finger, right next to the original wedding band she had never stopped wearing even during their separation. The 2 rings together looked perfect, like they had always been meant to be worn as a set. I love you, Mrs. Coleman, Ryan said, standing up and pulling her into his arms. I love you too, Mr. Coleman, Jasmine replied, and kissed him with all the passion and hope and joy in her heart. 2 weeks later, Sweet Dreams Bakery opened to a line of customers that stretched around the block. Jasmine had never felt more proud or more accomplished as she watched people taste her creations and smile with genuine delight. Ryan worked beside her, charming customers and helping with the register, his face glowing with pride every time someone complimented his wife's baking. During a brief lull in the afternoon rush, Jasmine found herself standing behind the counter, looking around at the dream she had thought was lost forever. The walls were painted a warm yellow that reminded her of sunshine, and Ryan had built custom shelving that displayed her pastries like works of art. Fresh flowers, sunflowers of course, decorated every table, and the smell of vanilla and cinnamon filled the air. Penny for your thoughts, Ryan said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Just thinking about how different things could have been, Jasmine said, leaning back against his chest. 6 months ago we were about to sign divorce papers. Now look at us. Now look at us, Ryan agreed, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Running a bakery together, planning a vow renewal ceremony, building a life that makes us both happy. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had signed those papers? Jasmine asked. Every day, Ryan admitted. And every day I'm grateful that we found the courage to try again instead. Even though it was hard? Even though everyone thought we were making a mistake. Especially because it was hard, Ryan said, turning her around in his arms so he could look into her eyes. The best things in life are worth fighting for, Jas. Our love is worth fighting for. I'm glad we fought, Jasmine said, reaching up to touch his face. I'm glad we chose each other. Always, Ryan promised. In every lifetime, in every universe, in every possible version of our story, I choose you. 1 month later, on a beautiful Saturday in June, Jasmine and Ryan renewed their vows in the backyard of their house, surrounded by family and friends who had watched them fall apart and come back together stronger than before. Nicole stood as Jasmine's maid of honor, tears streaming down her face as she watched her sister glow with happiness. Ryan's father walked him down the aisle, pride evident on his weathered face. Even Jasmine's father, who had been the most skeptical about their reconciliation, gave a toast at the reception about second chances and the power of true love. I've watched these two young people hurt each other and heal each other, he said, raising his glass toward the happy couple. I've seen them at their worst and at their best. And I can tell you that what they have now is stronger than what they started with, because it's built on truth instead of just hope. As the evening wound down and their guests began to leave, Jasmine and Ryan found themselves alone on their back porch, swaying together to music that was playing only in their hearts. No regrets? Ryan asked, his voice soft in the gathering darkness. No regrets, Jasmine confirmed. Only gratitude. For what? For the rain that brought us together in that coffee shop. For the separation that taught us how to value what we have. For the divorce papers that we were brave enough not to sign. For the second chance that became a new beginning. And for you, Ryan added, spinning her slowly under the stars. Most of all for you. They were about to sign the divorce, Jasmine mused, thinking about how they would tell their grandchildren this story someday. Until passion got in the way. Until love got in the way, Ryan corrected gently. Until we remembered that some things are worth fighting for. Until we learned that love isn't just a feeling, Jasmine agreed. It's a choice we make every day. And as they danced in their backyard, surrounded by the life they had almost thrown away and then rebuilt into something even more beautiful, both Jasmine and Ryan knew that they would keep choosing each other every day for the rest of their lives. Love had won the way it always does when two people are brave enough to fight for it. The way it always does when two people remember that the best love stories aren't about perfection. They're about persistence. The way it always does when two people choose each other again and again through storms and sunshine, through mistakes and forgiveness, through all the beautiful, messy, wonderful complications of building a life together. They were about to sign the divorce papers. Until passion, until love, until hope, until the courage to try again got in the way. And changed everything.